Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share a tutorial series with you, and this is the first tutorial. This is going to be a series of short videos designed for the new mini album maker or the beginner. This is something that I think a lot of people have questions about when they're first starting. They want to know how they can get into making mini albums, but it kind of seems daunting and overwhelming. So if that's you and you have an interest in learning, this is going to be the series video explaining some of the common tools that are used that might be helpful for you as you begin this journey in making mini albums. The first thing I want to start with here is my cutting and scoring board. This is from We Are Memory Keepers. I will link this in the description box below in case you want to buy one of these yourself. I bought this at Tuesday Morning a couple of years ago. So what's nice about this is it does have a cutting blade here so you can cut with it, and it's got the typical scoring lines here that makes it easy. So you can flip this up and then you're going to bring a piece of paper in. When you bring your cardstock in to score this, you can just score on these different lines. It comes with a scoring tool here that is really helpful to use, but if you want a finer scoring tool, you can pick up a set of scoring tools. So this I bought, I believe online, I don't even remember the brand of them. It came with 3, and you can see the different size balls and tips on them. And these come in really handy for different things, but I do use them to score. I also use them sometimes to pierce things, especially with this one here. So they can be very useful. I also use this bigger one whenever I am shaping flowers, when I'm making homemade flowers. So a set of these can come in really handy. They are not necessary, but they can be very useful. So if you do not have a cutting and scoreboard like this and you don't want to buy one of these, what you can also do is just buy a typical paper trimmer. If you do any type of paper crafting, you likely already have one of these. But the nice thing about this is when you open this, there is that cutting line here, and this can be used to score things too. Some of the paper trimmers, you can actually take the cutting blade out of it. Can't get this out right now, but if you take your cutting blade out, you can actually, there we go, you can replace this with a scoring tool. So some of the cutters actually make the tool, and some people I've seen, they keep both of them on there so they can use them both at the same time. What I do though with this one is I take the smaller one of these tools, and whenever I need to score something, I just measure it just like I'm going to cut something. So say I want to score something at 4 inches, I take this tool and I just run it down this line exactly where I would cut it, but I use the scoring tool instead. So this is a really easy way that you can use to score things if you don't have the scoreboard itself. Before I had those scoring tools, I would sometimes actually use the tip without the lead actually coming out of it, the tip of the pencil to score. So you can do that if you want to. So those are a couple of options. Obviously you want to have a paper trimmer so you can cut your papers. I actually use both of my cutters depending on what I'm doing. I leave one on my counter behind me and I leave the other one on my desk in front of me. So sometimes I get up and cut things and sometimes I use the other cutter. So that is an essential item for making mini albums. You definitely want to buy a nice cutting mat or a nice cutting board, and you definitely want to buy something that you can use to score. The other thing, obviously, that's going to be really important is a ruler. I have this ruler. It's a centering ruler. I'm pretty sure that I bought this at Michael's, but it's been a couple of years, so I might be wrong on that. I like this because whenever I am making certain things, I like to line it up so that I know where the center is, and the scoring ruler makes that really easy. So the one downside to this is if you use it a lot, the marks start to wear off, and so every once in a while you will need to replace your ruler. Definitely another essential is having a good ruler that you can use. I also like to have the clear ruler so that I can line things up on my pages and I can see through the ruler. Obviously, another really important thing that you're going to need is a pair of scissors. These just came from one of the craft stores. It's been so many years, I don't remember which craft store these came from. And then these scissors here are really important to me because I do a lot of fussy cutting around images. So they are very fine tip, and they really can be helpful for getting into those smaller areas to cut things. So I keep both of these on my desk and I use them on a regular basis. Another thing that I use all the time when I make mini albums is a bone folder. So this comes in really handy when you want to make really nice creases and folds in your papers. And so you can do this without a bone folder, but this makes it much, much easier. I also use this when I am gluing pieces down, just to make sure that the glue and the pieces are nice and stuck together. So I would highly recommend this. It'll be in any craft store that you go to. There might be different colors, different sizes, but this is just a general tool, so it doesn't have to be this specific size. Another tool that I use a lot is this piercing tool. It is from Cricut. This is so old, from the very first machine that they made when they were green and little. And so this came in a kit, but I use this all the time to actually pierce holes whenever I am making things with swing tabs. And for some other things, whenever I need to like put string or ribbons and things through the paper, this really comes in handy. So this is always on my desk. A couple of other things that I tend to use on a regular basis, obviously, are the adhesives that we're going to need for the actual album construction. So I have 3 of them here on my desk that are liquid based, and then I'll talk about the ones that are not liquid based. So the first is just a basic glue. I use the Aleene's Tacky Glue. You can get this at any of the craft stores. I have this gigantic bottle because I use so much of it. They have smaller bottles too, but this is what I prefer to use. If you have a preferred glue, that's okay to use too. I know a lot of people like art glitter glue. I have personally never used it, but if you have a preference, that's fine to do too. When I am using ribbons and I'm using lace and other things that are more fabric based, I use Fabri-Tac, but I don't use this with just papers. I will use this with Fabri-Tac because I think it bonds a lot easier and it stays a little stronger when it comes to things like fabric. And so this is my go-to for fabric-based things. When I am gluing on things like buttons and other things such as flat back pearls, I go to glossy accents. I feel like it's a really nice way to keep those embellishments on and they don't tend to come off, so this holds really well. So this is my preference for that. Some of the non-liquid based adhesives that can come in really handy are double-sided tape, which comes in a lot of different sizes. I'm going to get some of them out on my desk now. I'm trying to find all the sizes here. So I've just got these 2. So I have a 1/2 inch size that I don't even remember which store this came from, but you can get any type of double-sided tape. And then this is the 1/4 inch tape. I use a lot of the 1/4 inch. I sometimes do have the 1/8 of an inch too, but I'm out of that right now. So this can be really useful for certain things that you are doing in your mini albums. A lot of people prefer this to the glue itself, but I personally like the glue because I feel like over time, after a couple of years, I've noticed that sometimes things like tape do tend to not hold up very well. So my personal preference is to use wet glue as much as possible. I always keep a roll of masking tape in my desk drawer as well. Mine just happens to be black because I do a lot with black cardstock as bases, so sometimes I can use this and you won't really even tell that it's over the paper. Most of the times this is hidden though, so it doesn't really matter what color your tape is. So that is something else that can be really helpful as you're making mini albums. In thinking about the actual album itself, some of the supplies that you want to pick up to be able to begin making albums. The first thing, obviously, is what you're going to make the covers out of. And so for me, this is what I buy. It is sheets of 8.5 by 11 heavyweight chipboard. So it is very thick. It's about double the thickness of the boxes of like cereal and crackers and things that you would get from the store. You can use those supplies. It's a cheaper way. It's a nice way to recycle different things, but I tend to use a lot of it, so I use this. I will link this in the description box below. I get this on eBay and you can buy it in sheets of 10, 25, 50, and upwards. And the more papers, the more pages that you buy, the cheaper it is per sheet. So I will link that in case you are interested in purchasing that. The next thing that is really important for your mini albums is to work with cardstock. So typically the base of the album, if you are constructing your own and not using a store-bought base, you're going to make out of cardstock. I have a couple of preferences here. I really like just plain craft cardstock. I get my cardstock at Michael's typically. I like their craft better than what they get at Hobby Lobby, but I can use it. I like the craft because I feel like it is a lot thicker and sturdier compared to the other pages that do have dies and other things in it. I will use black cardstock as well for a lot of my albums. I also use ivory, just based on whatever the papers are. I sometimes will change the color up. So these are my go-to, is just 8.5 by 11 cardstock that I get at Michael's. A lot of times though, I will use Basil cardstock, and this is 12 by 12 papers, and this is a set of 25. I get these at Tuesday Morning for $3.99, so this is obviously a really good deal. This cardstock is really thick. It's actually textured on one side and smooth on the back side. I have this in a lot of different colors, and I think the price is really, really good. So this is a really nice quality. So I've made several mini albums with this type of paper, and I do like this as my go-to, but when I don't have the right shade, I do tend to lean towards, like I said, the craft, the black, or the cream or ivory colors for my album. You can make your album out of any color that you choose, but you want to kind of pay attention to some of the textures of it or some of the weight of it. I one time bought a heavier weight black cardstock from Michael's. It was so thick that when I tried to use it in the mini albums, it did crack whenever I was scoring and bending it. So you want to be careful that you don't get a paper that is too thin, but you also don't want to get a paper that's too thick. And so you want to figure out the one that's best for you. The next thing you want to think about is the papers that you're going to use to decorate your mini album. Obviously, most people tend to have a paper collection in mind for their album, or they will have a general theme or idea, Christmas or baby or something like that. But sometimes what happens is you just kind of get started, you make something, and you decide as you go. I'm going to bring in the collection that is on my desk right now. I am a huge fan of Graphic 45, and this is the collection that I will be working with for my next mini album, and you will likely see some of these things in the series as we go through the next couple of videos. Why I like Graphic 45, it makes it super simple, especially for a beginner crafter, to make sure that everything coordinates and matches. And here's why. Graphic 45 has a 12 by 12 paper pad. It's called the Patterns in Solids. And the papers in this pad are meant to be more background pages that complement the papers I'm going to show you in just a minute. So these papers, whenever you look at them, they're double-sided. They don't have busy prints. They're usually just some basic stuff, but they're also very, very pretty. And so this can be really helpful in using things in your mini album to complement your actual paper collection that you're going to be using. So with this one, I have the 8x8 paper pad here because I will be making an 8x8 album with this collection. So rather than cutting down my 12 by 12 papers, I'm just going to be using the 8x8 collection and making it easier. So with these papers, if I can get this open, what you will see is they coordinate together in this kit, but they also coordinate with the papers in the Patterns and Solids collection. So it makes it really simple to mix and match all these things, and you know that your album is going to look good. I also really like Graphic 45 because they have other things that match. I love these chipboard pieces. It's one of my favorite things to add to my albums because it gives a little bit of dimension and it also matches the collection. The other thing that I try to buy with the Graphic 45 collection is the journaling cards. And there's a larger card and there's a smaller card. And these are really nice for being able to either add journaling to pull out of your albums or just to actually use on your page whenever you have the image, and you can use some of the other papers as the background. So these all come in really handy. In addition to these, what Graphic 45 also has that I don't have here, they have a sticker sheet and they have die cut assortment with different pieces that are already die cut to help with embellishing. So they can be really helpful too, come in really handy. Sometimes I buy them, sometimes I don't, but you don't absolutely have to have them. All you really have to have is the paper, the decorative paper. All this other stuff is optional, but it can really make your albums stand out. So that is something that you want to make sure that you have is your paper. When it comes to adding different types of elements and interactive components to your album, there are going to be a couple of things that I'm going to teach you how to do in the next couple of videos. I'm going to teach you how to do magnetic closures. So you're going to need magnets. I have 2 different sizes of magnets here. I will link them in the description box below. They are called Total Element Neodymium magnets, and I get these on eBay. I'm pretty sure they have an Etsy shop as well. So I have in this package here little teeny itty bitty tiny magnets. These come in handy whenever I'm just needing to make sure that something sticks. These are really strong though, but if I have something really small that isn't going to have any paper piled up underneath of it, this one comes in handy. These ones are much stronger. They are bigger. Obviously, you'll be able to see when I pull them out of here. And they are very, very helpful to use in closing the flaps on albums, just so that everything stays nice and tight. So like I said, I will link these in the description box below. A lot of people prefer to use basic gray magnets. I have never used them personally, so I cannot comment on them. And the reason that I don't use them is because they're pretty pricey compared to these sorts of magnets that I have here. And so I have just chosen not to use them. If you don't want to use magnetic closures, a couple of other closures that you can make would involve using brads. So these are just brads I picked up at Michael's recently. It's got a couple of different finishes here. There's lots of other ones. I have drawers full of brads of different colors and different shapes. So the brads can be really easy as a way to make swing tabs, which I will show you in a video so that you know what that is, but they can hold things closed. Another really simple and basic closure that you can use brads to make buttons, or you can use actual buttons themselves, and you can use twine. So I just have a couple of different kinds of twine here. There's nothing special about these. And so basically you can use any type of twine to help to close your albums as well. So I will show you some different options for making twine ribbon closure, or twine and button closures. The other thing that you can use is ribbon, and this is a really simple, easy way to make closures for your album. And I personally like to use a lot of ribbon closures just because I think ribbon is really pretty in many albums. And so I just pulled a couple from my ribbon rack, and there's nothing fancy about them. This was from Joann Fabrics on clearance last year at Christmas, and then this one is, I'm pretty sure, just from Michael's, and it was pretty cheap ribbon. So basically you can use any type of ribbon that you would prefer. As long as it matches your album and you like it, it wouldn't be an issue or a concern. So this is a really simple and easy way to make closures for your album. Some other things that are completely optional, you do not have to do these things, but it can make your mini albums a little bit more interesting or fun. So I have a couple of punches here. These are border punches. They're both from Fiskars. I've gotten these at the craft stores, and they're really easy to use. You can make decorative borders on your albums. So these are a really simple, easy way. If you have a die cutting machine like the Spellbinders or the Big Shot, you can buy edge dies for that too. I do have that. I tend to use them pretty frequently actually in my albums because I like the looks of them. Another thing that you can use is distress ink. And so this is a set that has 4 different colors. I have a drawer full of other distress ink colors too. I just kind of pick it based on whatever it is I'm using for my papers. I actually don't always use distress ink because sometimes I like just a very clean look. Sometimes I prefer to have that distressed look, and so it really depends on what project I'm doing and who I'm doing it for. But that is something that can be helpful, and this is just the blending tool. I've gotten these sponges and the actual tool itself, so these pop off here so you can trade them out for different colors, and these both came from Michael's. The other thing that I tend to use pretty regularly in my albums is corner rounders. So I have a 1 inch and a 1/2 inch. There are so many different ones that have different shapes and different things. More decorative, you can use any of these you want. You can always just use a pair of scissors too, and you can trim around the corners, or you can leave your corners perfectly straight. It's up to you. But those are some basic things that I feel like are very helpful in mini albums. So what we're going to do is next, we're going to start talking about page construction. So if you felt like this video was helpful, and if you feel like that you want to start making mini albums, I hope you will join me in part 2, where we start to talk about making the base pages. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.